I still hear the exact sound the porch door made that Thursday evening, not because it creaked louder than usual, but because I was standing behind it, listening to my own daughter lie to someone on the phone. I'd just gotten home from my Tuesday shift at the hardware store 3 days a week now, enough to keep busy since Linda passed. I'd set my thermos on the counter and was about to call out to Megan when I heard her voice through the screen door, low and careful. No, don't mention the property in Ohio. Just say Tom's family is from Chicago originally. Keep it simple. I stood there with my hand on the doorknob, not moving. I know. Just let Dad meet them at the wedding. Not before. I stepped back from the door before she saw me, and I walked around to the garage like I'd just gotten home, like I hadn't heard a word. My chest felt tight the rest of the night. At dinner, I asked her, casual as I could manage, when I'd finally get to meet Tom's parents. Soon, Dad, she said, not looking up from her plate. They're just private people. Private people. 29 years old, and she'd become someone who used phrases like that with her own father. 6 years earlier, after Linda died, I'd made myself a promise in that hospital parking lot in Dayton that Megan would never feel like she'd lost both parents at once. I picked up extra shifts at the plant before I retired from it. I learned to iron a blouse from a video on my phone. I sat through parent-teacher conferences alone, feeling every eye in the room. I paid for her nursing school, her car when the transmission gave out, half the deposit on this wedding. And now, somehow, meeting the people my daughter was about to marry into had become a thing to manage around me, like I was a problem to be handled carefully. I looked over at Linda's photograph on the mantel, the one from our trip to the lake, her laughing with sunburned shoulders. She's keeping something from me, Lynn, I said quietly. The house didn't answer, same as it never had. 2 nights later, I drove my truck, the same green Silverado I'd had since before Megan started high school, over to the restaurant Tom had picked for us to finally have dinner together, all three of us. It sat along the river downtown, all exposed brick and low lighting, the kind of place where the menu doesn't list prices next to the entrees. Megan hugged me at the door, looking lovely and nervous in a way that reminded me so much of her mother it nearly stopped me in my tracks. Then Tom walked up. Firm handshake, both hands wrapped around mine like he'd practiced it. Mr. Callahan, been looking forward to this. His smile was the kind you see on the pharmaceutical commercials, bright, confident, and somehow telling you nothing at all. Dinner went fine through the appetizers. Megan talked about seating arrangements. I asked Tom what he did for work, and he gave me a smooth answer about consulting and property development that told me even less than his smile had. I waited until the entrees arrived before I asked the question I'd been carrying all week. So when do I get to meet your folks, Tom? Megan's eyes cut to him immediately. Not naturally, automatically, like she'd rehearsed which direction to look. Tom set down his fork slowly. My family's had some difficult history, sir. It's not something we like to bring up around new people. I understand difficult history, I said. I buried my wife. I'm not asking to relive anyone's trauma. I just figured a father usually meets the people his daughter's marrying into. He leaned in, voice still pleasant, edges still sharp underneath it. I hope you care about Megan enough not to go digging into things that could hurt people who don't deserve it. There it was. Not an answer, a warning dressed up as concern. I looked at Megan, waiting for her to say something. Anything. Instead, she said quietly, "They're just not going to be there, Dad. Please don't make this a thing." A thing, I repeated. I don't want anything to feel awkward, she said, and I understood exactly who she meant by that. Not Tom's parents. Me, the retired machinist in a Kohl's blazer, driving a 14-year-old truck, asking questions nobody wanted answered. I forced a smile and let it go, because that's what a father does when his daughter's getting married in 9 days. Driving home through our old neighborhood, past the same porch lights and the same dog that always barked at my truck, I told myself I was imagining things. Maybe Tom's family really did have their reasons. Maybe Megan was just trying to keep the peace. I wanted so badly to believe that. Then around 10 that night, my email chimed. The venue coordinator had sent the final seating chart meant for the wedding party, but apparently sent to the whole guest list by mistake. I almost closed it without looking. Instead, I scrolled through bridesmaids, groomsmen, my seat at table 2, Megan's Aunt Diane. Then I stopped scrolling. Table 5, 2 names I didn't recognize. R. Delacroix. V. Delacroix. I read it 3 times. Not unable to attend. Not blank. 2 assigned seats, 2 place settings, a whole table reserved. Someone was expecting them to be there, which meant someone had lied to my face over dinner an hour earlier. I sat at my kitchen table with the printed seating chart in front of me and Linda's photo watching from the mantel, and I said out loud to an empty house, "Something's wrong here, Lynn, and I think our girl's standing in the middle of it." I almost let it go the next morning. I told myself I was an old man with too much time and not enough to do with it. But by 8 o'clock, I had a legal pad out and one line written at the top. Who are the Delacroix? I drove to the county recorder's office instead of the gym like I usually did on Fridays. Told myself I was only curious. The clerk at the counter, a heavy-set woman with reading glasses on a chain, showed me how to search property records myself. No questions asked, public information. Belongs to anyone patient enough to look for it. I typed in Delacroix. 40-some results came back. Most meant nothing. A farm 2 counties over, a foreclosed condo, a name that didn't match. I almost gave up until I tried pairing it with LLC instead. One result stopped me cold. Delacroix Property Solutions, LLC. Registered agent, Vincent R. Delacroix. Address in Beaver Creek, 18 minutes from my house. Megan had told me Tom's parents lived out of state. 18 minutes was not out of state. I called my sister-in-law, Pam, that afternoon, mostly just to hear a familiar voice. I told her everything, the dinner, the seating chart, the name Delacroix. She went quiet on the line longer than felt normal. "Pam, say that name again," she said. "Delacroix. Vincent and I think the wife's name was Renata." "Renata Delacroix." Pam's voice had gone flat. "Frank, I haven't heard that name since Meadowbrook." Something cold moved through my chest. Meadowbrook was the rehabilitation facility where Linda had gone after her hip replacement, where she'd caught the infection that took her 6 days later, where I'd signed a settlement I still couldn't fully remember signing because grief had made every piece of paper look the same. "Renata ran the place," Pam said. "Or close to it. I remember her name on everything, memos, the complaint forms, all of it. I hated that woman more than I've ever hated anyone." I sat down hard on the edge of my bed. "Pam, I think my daughter's marrying into that family." The line was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "You need to be sure before you say a word to Megan. Sure and careful." That evening, I drove to Beaver Creek anyway, telling myself I only wanted to see the house, nothing more. Big colonial, new landscaping, quiet money instead of loud money. I parked across the street and waited without knowing exactly what I was waiting for. A silver Lexus pulled into the driveway. Tom got out first, then Megan from the passenger side, laughing at something. A woman came out the front door and hugged Megan the way you hug someone you've known for years, not someone meeting for the first time. A tall, gray-haired man followed, clapping Tom on the shoulder like old friends. Family, comfortable, familiar family. Not strangers hiding some painful history, exactly the way Tom had made it sound. My daughter had looked me in the eye at that restaurant and lied. I followed the 2 cars at a careful distance to a diner off Route 4, the kind with a pie case by the register and a bell over the door. I didn't go inside where they sat. I took a booth near the front window, close enough to catch pieces of conversation drifting over the sound of the kitchen. "Once the wedding's done, he'll come around eventually," I heard Tom say. "The house is the cleanest asset in the whole picture," a man's voice added. "Vincent," I guessed. My stomach tightened around the word house. Then a woman's voice, smooth and unbothered. "Old cases don't resurface unless somebody pays good money to dig them up." The fork slipped clean out of my hand and clattered against my plate. That sentence, Meadowbrook had taught me that exact lesson 9 years too late. Quiet, tired families don't fight, and tired families forget. I paid for pie I never touched and drove home in silence. That night, I pulled Linda's file box down from the top of the hallway closet, the one I'd promised myself I'd never open again. Hospital records, insurance correspondence, the settlement letter from the attorney whose name I'd tried hard to forget. And near the bottom, a faded internal memo I didn't remember ever seeing before, the kind that gets copied to a family almost as an afterthought. Signed at the bottom in blue ink, R. Delacroix, Director of Resident Services. Not a coincidence anymore. A connection. I barely slept. By morning, I decided to find someone who'd actually worked there. An old coworker from the plant, Hector, had a sister who'd done home health visits out of Meadowbrook years back. A few calls later, I had an address in Fairborn and a name, Dolores Whitfield, 74, retired nurse's aide. Dolores answered her door in a housecoat and slippers, studied me for a second too long, and said, "You look familiar?" Frank Callahan. My wife was Linda. Her whole face changed. "Oh, honey, come in." Her apartment smelled like coffee and menthol rub. She set out a plate of store-bought cookies without asking if I wanted any, and for the better part of an hour, she talked while I mostly listened. "Renata ran that place like a queen running her court," Dolores said. "Vincent handled the money side. She handled everybody's fear." I asked her straight out, were there other families, other complaints? "More than they ever let get reported," she said. "Papers got corrected, times got adjusted. I never saw anybody forge a chart outright, but I saw plenty of paperwork get tidier than it had any right to be." She got up slowly, went to an old filing cabinet, and pulled out a thin folder she'd apparently kept for years out of pure stubbornness. Newsletters, a newspaper clipping, a memo titled "Reconcile Resident Logs Before State Review," signed by R. Delacroix. "Kept it because it never sat right with me," she said. "Doesn't prove a crime, proves how they thought, though." Then she mentioned something I hadn't asked about. Their boy used to come around back then. 16, maybe 17. Ran errands, made copies. "Tom," I said quietly. "There was a mix-up once," Dolores said. "A resident's family couldn't find some paperwork about her belongings. I caught that boy practicing somebody's signature on a scrap of paper once. Nobody said a word. His parents owned the building." She handed me a photocopy on my way out, a civil complaint filed 3 years back. An elderly widow in a neighboring county pressured into selling her home to an LLC for far under what it was worth. Settled quietly, no admission of wrongdoing. Another tired family who couldn't afford to keep fighting. At the door, Dolores put a hand on my arm. "Frank, if your girl marries into that family, they won't just take a house from her." She looked at me with the certainty of someone who'd watched too many families come apart. "They'll teach her to call it love." I drove home with the radio off, no longer asking myself whether something was wrong, only asking how much time I had left to stop it. I called my old friend Warren Chu the next morning, a lawyer I'd known since our kids were in Little League together, sharp as anyone I'd ever met and about as patient as a stone wall. His office sat above a bakery downtown that made the whole building smell like cinnamon. "Sit down before your knees give out," he said when I walked in carrying Linda's box. "That obvious? You're walking like a man who lost an argument with a flight of stairs." I told him everything, start to finish, while he took notes on a legal pad and circled things twice. When I finished, he took his glasses off and rubbed his eyes. "Frank, there are real red flags here, financial ones. But if you walk into that wedding and accuse these people of killing Linda, you'll look like a grieving old man losing his grip before the appetizers are cleared. You think I'm imagining this? No, I think you've got pieces. Pieces need to be used the right way, not thrown at people." He slid a blank pad toward me. "Tell Megan you want to give her and Tom a wedding gift, a financial consultation, estate planning, protecting her future. Make it sound generous." "That feels like lying." "It's called strategy," Warren said. "That's why you're paying me." My phone rang before I could even leave his office. "Megan." "Dad, what did you do?" Her voice was tight, sharp in a way I'd never heard from her. "Tom said you were parked outside his parents' house." My stomach dropped straight through the floor. I saw something that worried me. "You followed us?" "Do you have any idea how humiliating that is? Do you have any idea how humiliating it is finding out my own daughter lied to my face about people living 20 minutes away?" Silence. Then quieter. "You don't understand." "No, I don't. You're trying to ruin this because you don't trust anybody anymore." A pause. And then the line that landed hardest. "You never moved on after Mom, and now you're dragging her into it too." I gripped the phone until my knuckles ached. I thought of Megan at 22, standing beside her mother's grave in a coat too thin for a date in November, shaking so hard I thought she'd fall. I'd spent 6 years trying not to lose that girl. And there she was on the phone, sounding like somebody else's script. "Come by tonight," I said. "Bring Tom. I want to give you both something, a wedding gift. Financial planning, so you two start this marriage protected." Suspicion crept into her voice. "That's it? Nothing else?" "That's it. You'll stop digging? I'll stop guessing," I said. That much, at least, was true. Tom showed up at Warren's office Saturday morning in a suit that cost more than my truck. Megan came in beside him, pale, exhausted, her ring catching the fluorescent light every time her hand moved. Tom shook Warren's hand, all warmth. Appreciate you making time. Frank can be protective. Usually a parent's job, Warren said, not smiling back. I stayed quiet, which was the hardest part. Warren laid out papers instead of accusations, full financial disclosure, any LLCs, any pending claims, anything that might affect Megan after the marriage. Tom nodded along, agreeable, right up until Warren asked about Delacroix Property Solutions by name. The color left his face for just a second before he caught himself. Standard business entity, not really relevant here. Then disclosure should be simple, Warren said, pleasant as ever. Tom's jaw worked. That's private family business. Megan's head turned slowly. What LLC? Tom stood up too fast. I need to take a call. His phone hadn't rung once. He stepped into the hallway, and the door didn't latch all the way behind him. His voice dropped, but not enough. They're asking about the LLC directly. No, I didn't tell her that part. Megan sat frozen, staring at that half-open door. When Tom came back in, smiling like nothing had happened, something in Megan had already cracked. I need some air, she said, and walked out before he could stop her. That night, Warren called at 9:40. The LLC's tied to a bridge loan application, he said. Somebody's borrowing money against an expected asset. What asset? An anticipated family transfer, Frank. Your daughter's part of the paperwork on a business plan, not just a bad fiancé. I looked at Linda's photo on the mantle and didn't say anything for a long time. The rehearsal dinner went ahead anyway, because nobody had officially called anything off yet. Soft lighting, white tablecloths, a private room overlooking a pond behind the restaurant. If you'd walked in blind, you'd have seen nothing but a happy family getting ready for a wedding. I wore the navy blazer Linda had bought me for my retirement, insisting every man needed one jacket that made him stand up straighter. Megan greeted me with a stiff hug that hurt more than no hug at all would have. Vincent and Renata arrived a few minutes after Tom, introduced simply as Vincent and Renata, no last name volunteered, just enough truth wrapped around a lie to get by. Renata shook my hand and said it was nice to finally meet me. I looked at her 2 seconds longer than was comfortable. Before answering, Warren walked in 20 minutes later, uninvited but not crashing, carrying a leather folder and nodding politely to the coordinator on his way to my table. Everything in here is public record, he said quietly, sliding envelopes onto the table beside me. No surprises. Let them talk first. Halfway through dinner, Tom stood and raised his glass. When I met Megan, I knew I'd found somebody who believed in trust, family, building something real. Guests smiled and applauded. Somebody's aunt actually said, "Aw." Then I stood. I waited until the room went quiet on its own. When Megan told me about this wedding, I was excited to finally meet the family she was joining. I looked at Vincent and Renata. I was told they couldn't attend tonight. Then I found out they'd been living 18 minutes from my house the whole time. A ripple of confused looks moved through the room. Tom's smile went tight. There's some misunderstanding here. There isn't, I said, and set the printed seating chart on the table. I don't mind privacy. I mind being lied to. The room went dead still. I walked the envelopes around the tables myself, one at a time. Megan, Tom, Vincent, Renata, a couple of Tom's business associates who'd been laughing loudest an hour earlier. Nobody opened theirs right away? Read them now, I said, sitting back down. Megan opened hers first. Copies of the LLC filing. The civil complaint from the widow in the next county. Meadowbrook's old memo with Renata's signature. A short statement from Dolores Whitfield confirming she'd worked there and kept the documents herself. This proves nothing, Vincent said. It proves more than you wanted people to know, Warren answered evenly. This is harassment, Renata said, folding the papers shut. It's documentation, Warren said. Tom rounded on me, finger jabbing the air. This is because he can't let go of what happened to his wife. He blames my family. I blame your family for hiding from it, I said quietly. The dining room door opened. Dolores Whitfield walked in slowly with her cane, in her Sunday church dress, and every head in the room turned. Hello, Renata, she said. The color drained clean out of Renata's face. I don't know this woman. You knew me well enough to have me rewrite 3 incident reports, Dolores said, calm as anything. I always wondered if you'd ever tell people who you used to be. Tom grabbed Megan's wrist. We're leaving. She looked down at his hand, then back up at him. Let go. We're leaving, Megan. No, she said, and pulled her arm free. Every conversation in that room had already stopped. Megan turned to me, eyes filling. Dad, what is this? What happened to Mom? I hadn't planned to say it there, in front of everyone, but she deserved the truth, not a performance. Your mother went into Meadowbrook to recover from hip surgery, I said. She never came home. They settled the case, changed their name on paper, moved on like it never happened. I looked at her, not at them. But I never forgot your mother, and I wasn't going to let you marry into forgetting her too. Nobody spoke. Somewhere behind us, a server quietly set down a tray she'd been holding and just stood there. The wedding never happened. No dramatic cancellation, no big announcement. The florist truck simply never showed up Saturday morning. And by noon, everyone who needed to know knew. Megan called every vendor herself, one after another, absorbing penalty after penalty without complaint. She didn't come by the house for 11 days. I counted without meaning to. On the 12th afternoon, her old Civic pulled into my driveway. She got out in a faded college hoodie, no makeup, hair pulled back, looking 29 and 19 at exactly the same time. Hi, Dad. Hi. Neither of us moved for a second. Then she said, I'm sorry, and I stepped aside and said, come in. We sat at the kitchen table where Linda's file box had sat for days. I kept telling myself you were overreacting, she said. I know. I thought you hated him. I never hated him. I was scared of him. I looked out the window toward the yard Linda used to garden in. There's a difference. She nodded slowly, wiping her eyes. I lied to you. You did. I owe money, she said finally. Cancellation fees. I've paid what I can, but I was wondering, I already knew where that sentence was going, and I loved my daughter too much to let her finish it that way. I already paid what I promised toward this wedding, I said gently. I'm not paying the rest. I'll help you build a budget. I'll help you find someone to talk to. I'll help you rebuild every way that matters. I took her hand across the table, but I won't use my pension or your mother's memory to rescue you from a choice you made after you stopped listening to me. She cried quietly, not angry, just tired in the way people get after finally putting something down. I don't deserve that kindness. This isn't kindness, I said. It's a boundary. Weeks passed. Megan found a smaller apartment, started seeing a counselor. Warren recommended, picked up extra shifts to cover what was left of the bills. We had dinner together most Sundays, some easy, some painfully quiet, all of them honest. One morning in early fall, I drove out to the cemetery with a bunch of daisies on the passenger seat because Linda never liked flowers that tried too hard. I knelt down slow, the way I do everything now, and told her about all of it. Megan, the wedding, Dolores, Warren, how frightened I'd been that protecting our daughter might cost me our daughter after all. Then I just sat there a while, not because I had more to say, but because I finally believed she already knew. These days, the house is quieter, my truck's a little older, and my knee still tells the weather better than the morning news does. But something in me changed. For 6 years, I'd confused sacrifice with love, believed that being a good father meant saying yes so often that Megan would never feel a single hardship I could prevent. I was wrong about that. Sometimes the greatest thing a parent can give is the courage to say no before it's too late to matter. I still love my daughter with everything I have left. That never changed, and it never will. What changed was understanding that love without any boundaries eventually just becomes permission, and permission is exactly what people like Tom spend their whole lives hunting for. Looking back, I don't think the real victory was that the wedding never happened. The victory was that the truth finally had room to breathe in my house again. I couldn't undo what happened to Linda, but I could refuse to let silence take anything else from the people I still had left to love. If you've ever had to choose between keeping the peace in your family and telling them the truth instead, you already know exactly how heavy that choice is. I'd love to hear, down in the comments, what you would have done in my place. Loving someone doesn't mean protecting them from every hard truth. Sometimes it means handing them one, even when it costs you their anger for a while. A real boundary isn't punishment, it's just love that finally learned how to say no. And truth, however long it stays buried, always finds room to breathe again. A small note for you, this story was written and imagined by AI purely for entertainment, but I hope the life lesson tucked inside it still felt real and worth carrying with you.